Well, welcome back. As you can see, we got a boat full here. We got my nephews Van and Asher, my buddy Peter, and we are out finally on the Rainy River. Always excited to get out here. And today I'm just going to give you a bunch of information, kind of an up-to-date report on river conditions, ice, water temps, all that kind of stuff. Plus, we're going to mix in a bunch of locations, tips and tricks, presentations, all the information that you're gonna need to know if you're gonna plan on coming on up here. And we'll kind of share what's working best for us today, because we've tried a few different things and there's definitely a few patterns that are working better than others. So we got a bunch of information coming your way. Stay tuned. Yep. They've all been kind of that eater size, but these are even a little smaller. See another one on that tungsten Norfin. This one's actually the long shank. Show that one off quick. But that's going to lead us right kind of into locations. And what we're looking for here, we've kind of narrowed it down to a couple different things that we're looking for today. And one is kind of on the edge of where these troughs are a little bit. Working on the edge when you see some contours going in and out. A lot of times what that's going to be, that's either going to be some sand that's going to be bumpy, or some different breaks in the current, or there's going to be rocks mixed in. We have a little bit of both right here. We have some rocks mixed in. I'll show you some side imaging shots. Some rocks, we have some sand, we have some of those up and downs like the whoops almost, and those fish are kind of sitting around those, trying to find those breaks in the current. We've actually found a few fish today up shallow as well, trying to almost sun themselves with this sun. Right now we're sitting at about 10 feet, so we're a little bit shallower in that 8 to about 12. We have moved out in the middle a little bit more, but that is location number one that we're kind of looking for. Another location that we're looking for is, again, almost right in the middle of those little troughs, you know, depending on the depth, especially when you see that up and down on your 2D, on your live scope, on whatever electronics you have, when you see that up and down, again, kind of a current break. But one of the areas was a little bit of a pinch point, a little bit narrower, and so it was really easy to work. We're actually surrounded by ice. I'll just throw a clip of that in quick. And surrounded by ice, catching a few fish, but it was just a narrow point, kind of working out to this little bit deeper flat. It's kind of the deeper part of the river, but a very narrow spot. So that's kind of what you're looking for. As far as locations, those are a couple of the spots that we've been finding the most action today. I'll throw in some more tips, tricks, kind of what we're looking at here in just a little bit. Got one? You bet. Looks better from here. Again, it's tough to tell into the current. Still not a bad one though. Oh, there we go. Again, ooh, that one's got lots of warts on it. That one's on that little more green, long shank tungsten jig. A little bit better guy right there. There's been a lot this size. And that's gonna kind of lead us right into presentation here. We've kind of been throwing a lot of things at them. I mean, we've seen a lot of fish on the electronics. We've been working around a lot of fish. We've been kind of trying to narrow it down to see what they're biting on. So I'll kind of walk you through some of the things we've been using. This is one that we've started using a little bit more. This is a hair jig. This is the Northland Flash Tail, I believe it's called, and that is with an eye candy plastic on it. Another few different kind of jigs and plastics. When I want to go a little more finessey, a little smaller, I'm using a little bit smaller, a black tungsten long shank again to get that bait, or to get that hook through that bait a little farther. And that is again in that black presentation. And then this one is with that underspin on it, a little more thump to it with the underspin and with the paddle tail. So as far as the artificials, that's mostly what we've been using. And we've caught a little bit of fish on everything, but honestly what's been kind of far and away the best today, which is pretty typical when the bite gets to be a little bit tougher when the water temps are a little bit colder, is a jig and minnow. So one of the ones we've been using is a short shank jig by Northland. That's the tungsten one as well. And also the long shank jig. We've kind of liked using some of those longer shanks so we can get them a little further down. A lot of times when I'm using minnows, I am liking to use the short shank because you can just hook it right through the head and let that thing swim around. But the long shank, with them kind of being a little bit more finicky, has been very beneficial to be getting that hook down a little bit farther. The rod that I've mostly been using today is the Elliott Identity. This is the jigs and plastics. This one is a 610 medium light extra fast. Honestly, one that I might not use all the time on the river, but this year the current is very slow. So we can use a little bit lighter jigs right now. Sometimes we use an 1/8, a 1/4 ounce, maybe up to 3/8, depending on how deep we're fishing or how fast we're moving. So you're able to use a little bit lighter setup. That is paired with the Piscifun Carbon X2 2000, and that's, like I said, 90% of what I've been using. If you kind of want a little more of a breakdown of maybe presentations or rods, reels, tackle, all that kind of stuff. I'll link a video below where I talk through all my river presentations and I go a little more in depth than what I did today and just be able to give you a little more how I work these baits and a little bit of that information. So overall, jigs and plastic, jigs and minnows, not a huge surprise, but definitely leaning more towards that jig and minnow again with that colder water temps. We'll kind of talk real quick water temps. Right now I'm seeing 36.9. It's been varying a lot from like 34 to 38 depending on the part of the river. Honestly, we're still working through a lot of ice. To get to this area, we had to kind of break through a little ice, which is honestly probably why you don't see anybody around us, because that very rarely happens. Even early on the river is having very few people around. So it's kind of nice being able to be out on the river, hardly anybody around, catching a bunch of fish is a ton of fun. So we've talked a little locations, we've talked some presentations. We're gonna keep fishing a little bit, and then I've got some more kind of helpful tips and tricks, just some little intricacies of this bite that might be helpful for you, either if you're the first time coming up or if you've been coming up a long time and just trying to learn something new. Ooh, Van, you're gonna be right on that fish. He's following. Was following. Yep. Yep. That was that fish. You bet. Oh yeah. You bet. I'll hold your fish for you. Is that okay? Yeah. There's Van's right there. Like I said, a lot of days we're not really batting an eye at that, but today, with a lot of the fish being a little bit smaller, that is a great fish. I mean, don't get me wrong, any day that's a great fish, but there's days where those are definitely the minority and you're catching a bunch of big fish. We're not quite there yet, but like I said, this bite's only gonna keep getting better. We've talked presentations, but I'm gonna talk almost strategy, how we're doing this. We've been doing it one of two ways. There's a lot of different ways to do it. There you go. We will get back to that in just a second. Asher just hooked up. You know the action's good when I can't even get through a talking point. This might be the one we're looking for. Oh yeah, that's a bigger of the day. Not a giant, but that's a good one. You bet. Oh, I'm trying to net it while still being able to show it. Oh, and it popped off. That's a good fish, Asher. Yeah. You bet. Oh yeah, that one's getting fat. That's a good fish. That was, I did not think it was that big right away. Nope. There you go. We just got Asher's in it, sitting in the net in the water. We're gonna grab a quick picture. Oh, just a little guy. Here, we'll just show that one real quick so we can get a picture of Asher's. You bet. That is a beauty. I know I'm showing off Asher's fish. Not very uncle-like of me, but a beautiful Rainy River fish. These are more what you come here for, and sometimes they can come by the handfuls very easily. Today, more of a eater size to that low 20s. But good action. So being able to mix in a fish like that, honestly, anytime you're on the Rainy River, you never know when you get a chance to hook into an upper 20s, even that 30-incher. All right, so we'll see if we can get through this without catching another fish, hopefully not. But basically we've been doing a couple different things. We've been either slowly going up current and having two people just kind of like drifting or basically going straight behind the boat to kind of get that area, and then two people casting off to the side. And as you cast off to the side, you don't really reel very often. It's not necessarily a slow reel. A lot of times what you're doing is just penduluming it with the current and with moving a little bit faster, so it goes and then it eventually gets kind of to where that other person is fishing, and then you can kind of reel up. Do the same thing, cast and pendulum. So we're doing that going forward, and that's actually been working a little better now. Earlier in the day, what was definitely working better is slow drifting with the current and using the live scope to kind of pinpoint some of these fish. A lot of times when we're moving up current, we're moving anywhere from like that 0.2 to about 0.5 miles an hour. Again, it's kind of tricky when, you know, a lot of times with this ice, it looks like you're moving a lot faster because that ice is moving past you. But looking at your GPS, being able to kind of tell in that kind of 0.2 to 0.4, 0.5 is what has easily been the best. And honestly, when you're going with the current, is whatever the current is doing today. It's definitely slower than it typically is, but efficient enough to be able to cover quite a bit of area moving downstream. When we kind of find an area of fish, that tends to be when we move upstream a little bit more because you're moving slower. When you're slowly working upstream, you're working slower, you're not able to cover as much ground. When I'm kind of going to a new area or scouting some new spots, that's when I'll work downstream because you can cover a lot more ground. You don't have to wear as much on the trolling motor, and obviously depending on the current, some days it's going to be a lot harder on those trolling motors. But you know, being able to switch to these Amped Outdoors lithium batteries honestly is kind of nice because you don't have to worry about it anymore. But that is definitely something to consider if you haven't upgraded to lithium batteries or anything like that. Decent one? Still looks decent. I don't think it's that small. Oh no, that's a good fish. You bet. That's a solid fish. Another solid fish. Just these nice bellies on these things is so much fun. Well, Asher is definitely getting the biggest ones today. And so real quick also, just kind of to elaborate on some of the location, kind of show you the spot on the spot. One of the things we're looking for is we've kind of been making this drift along this whole edge of this trough, but our two easily most productive spots have been almost on these little points. It's almost like a point sticking out from shore, which again, another thing is break that current. Sometimes it has some rocks on it, but being able to kind of pinpoint some of those. So I'm actually working a little slower. Sometimes I'll spot lock and we'll pitch cast until we don't see any fish on the live scope or on the side imaging. And even while you're not moving, a lot of times you can see fish on the side imaging. They'll just be a little more elongated. They'll look as maybe like a dark shadow on there. So use your electronics. Nice thing is, it's easy to come out to the river without electronics as well. I'm an electronics junkie. I love how it can make you more efficient on the water. But being able to come out here with no electronics, honestly, for many, many years, I came out here in a little tin can boat and we had some of our best days doing that. So being able to come out, you can work through these different areas. You can use a map to be able to kind of pinpoint some of these locations to give yourself a very good chance of catching good numbers of fish, but also potentially some big fish. All right, real quick, I'm going to just kind of show you, we're going to drive up, we're going to make another pass. I'm going to show you kind of what we're going to look at on the side imaging, what we're seeing on these areas. Hopefully we'll give you a good idea of kind of what you're looking for on the side imaging if you don't have live scope or anything like that. Kind of show you what that should look like here. So here I'll kind of show you, we're seeing some sand. You can just see a few of those ripples that we were talking about. And now we dropped off a little bit deeper. So there you can see a few fish scattered. These ones are not crazy big or crazy thick, but you can see a few fish. And ooh, actually now we're getting on some rocks. Again, now we're getting up a little shallower. So this is one of those points that I was talking about, where you see that kind of point sticking out. You can see us getting up a little bit shallower. You can see a few fish kind of dot around. You see some rocks mixed around. And you're seeing a little bit more structure for these fish to kind of hang around. There's a good shot on the side imaging there of kind of those bottom side, those back side of those really good drop-offs. You're seeing a few more rocks, a little sand mixture, and you can even see on the live scope here, I'll show you that, how it's kind of going up and down, and we'll see it here on the side imaging as well. Should get to a drop-off here. There we go. This is a good example right here. You can see some of those stair steps on the 2D and the down imaging, but also on the side imaging. And you can even see that rock on the back side of the side imaging there. That is another little sweet spot. When you have that rock, again, just more things to kind of break up that current, kind of show you what you're looking for. Now we've kind of seen a stretch that has some fish on the side imaging. It has some of the structure that we're looking for. Now we're kind of cruising up. We're keeping an eye on the side imaging in case we can see fish on there. We're also panning around with a live scope, seeing if we can make a few more targeted casts. Obviously, everyone's just kind of fan casting, but if I see a group of fish, I'll kind of point an area to cast to. One of the things you will notice that those fish are definitely a lot tighter to bottom. They're not going to be up suspended like they are a lot of times in the summer. They're going to be very close to bottom, going to look very similar to rock. So being able to see these fish, whether they are moving a little bit or you can see them chasing after your jigs, that takes a little practice, but you're going to eventually be able to differentiate what you're seeing between rocks and fish, even when they're low to the bottom like that. From the black? Yep. Oh no, second cast on that bucktail jig. Shoot, that one did not feel very big, but you could just see it hanging right on that ledge. They like to just sit right on the back side of that. You could probably see that fish. Yeah, there it is, just on bottom, just a little bit, about 15 feet out. Maybe I'll actually just pitch out to it and see. But you can see this definitely just kind of cruising right on that back side. Ooh, he was starting to come for it. Yep, he's coming back. Come on. That's awesome. Didn't want it. But yeah, like I was saying, you can definitely see how there's breaks. They will kind of break the current for these fish and they'll just kind of sit right behind. I'll kind of scan around, see if we can see. I guess I don't see any more on there, but you can see the one or two fish that were sitting right behind there, and you'll see that quite frequently. Got one whammy in? You bet.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one. Asher, do you want a net? Yeah. Nice one, bud. That was just dragging behind the boat too, wasn't it? There we go. Another little better one, probably in that 23, 24 inch range. Again, that one was almost directly behind the boat. Some of our biggest fish today have come off just that slow drag right behind the boat. Another little piece that I did want to add is when you are coming up here, make sure you dress in layers because it's always 10 degrees colder on the water. It's like pretty nice out today, 40 degrees with just a slight breeze, and we are sitting pretty good. I have my Norfin rain suit on. This is the Rebel Pro. This thing is just awesome for this early season, late season. I wore a lot last fall. It's insulated, it's protected from the wind, protected from the rain, obviously. So I always have some sort of layers like that, and then if I get too hot, I can always take it off. So always overdress, do not underdress. But sometimes I'll even wear my Norfin ice suit, but this suit, perfect for this early season Rainy River time frame.
Oh, just that one.
Last minnow. There you go. Van is on our very last minnow. Another solid fish, a lot in this ballpark right here. Fun little afternoon out here. Honestly, kind of a quick hitter. We came up later, leaving a little earlier. Gorgeous day though. Hope you found some value in this video. If you did, I would love if you would subscribe down below. If you had any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or comment on this video. I would love to help you out in any way that I can. If you're heading on up to the river, good luck, stay safe. We'll see you next time.